Hello, everyone. This is another episode of the Spectrum Spotlight, and today's guest is Dr. Daniel Franklin. How are you doing, Dr. Franklin?
I'm doing great.
Awesome, awesome. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been in education for over 30 years. I work with students with a wide range of learning and behavioral differences, specifically students with language-based learning disabilities, such as dyslexia, ADHD, processing issues, and of course, autism. A large proportion of the students with whom I work, students of all ages, children, teens, young adults, and adults, are individuals with autism. And it's a group of kids, teens, young adults who are very near and dear to me, and I'm delighted to be here speaking with you, David.
Awesome. Likewise, I'm honored to have you here with us. So, what got you into writing on autism?
Well, I started out in education over 30 years ago in special education. And at that time, most of the students with whom I was working were students who had specific learning disabilities in the area of reading, writing, spelling. Math was also an issue. Increasingly, I began to work with students who also had ADHD and executive functioning deficits. And in those days, 30 years ago, unfortunately, children with autism were segregated out of regular education setting. A real tragedy, in my view. I think we can really address the needs of all people in environments that are heterogeneous, that is, students with all types of different learning and behavioral characteristics, including autism. But increasingly, I began to see more and more students with autism in my practice, both in the classroom and working individually. And in very little time, I discovered a very large proportion of my practice was supporting children, teens, and young adults with autism, not only with regard to school and academic learning, but all facets of life, providing organizational coaching, life skill coaching. We provide school companions, not just for students in K-12 school, but also for students in college. So a lot of our students go off to college and they really benefit from having the support of a companion who can help them navigate not only the academic facets of college, but the more broad environment as well, managing their life skill needs, navigating this social environment, and advocating on behalf of themselves.
Yeah. Self-advocacy is very important if you're on the spectrum. That's something I need to work on myself. I'm an adult with autism, but it's still a skill I could cultivate. So what got you, explain what your book on language-based learning disability covers. Because I know it sold quite well, and it's kind of, would you say it's your magnum opus, like your book that like you're very proud of and that,
It certainly is. And
gotcha.
it's a book I actually started writing a number of years ago, and then I became very busy teaching a UC San Diego graduate extension course on the principles of supporting children, teens, and young adults with a wide range of learning and behavioral differences. Now, we know that a lot of these learning and behavioral characteristics overlap. So, for example, when you work with a student with dyslexia, they have a high frequency of also having ADHD. Individuals with autism have a secondary diagnosis 70% of the time of ADHD. So we know that when you work with a student with any one of the common learning or behavioral differences, it's likely that they're going to exhibit some other learning and behavioral differences too. So we really want to be thinking holistically. That's why my book is called Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities, including dyslexia, ADHD, dyscalculia, the math version of dyslexia, and so forth. I wanted very much to include autism in the title, but the publishing company at that time wanted me to stay focused on a few other areas. But I am currently working on a second book. It will be Helping Your Child with Autism that will have many of the same strategies. Don't hold your breath on its publication date because it's in the very early developmental stages. And if you want a great book on helping a child with autism, my current book, Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities, is going to be really helpful to you as a parent or educator or clinician working with an individual with autism.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I got to recommend it to more parents because it looks very comprehensive. It reminds me a lot of Dr. Prezant's book a lot. It reminds me a lot of that, which is really good. Take that as a compliment.
Oh, I do. Dr. Barry Prezant's book, Uniquely Human, is the #1 best-selling book on autism and is an outstanding book. I recommend it frequently too. I think Dr. Prezant speaks very globally in terms of social, emotional development and the environment. My book zeroes in more on support at school and academic and learning needs.
It's awesome. That's awesome. I can kind of see why your publisher would focus on other areas because but there also is like an overlap between autism and ADHD. Like our first guest speaker, who's a professor at the Arizona State University, said like there's like an 80% chance if you have ADHD, you'll have autism, and 80% chance if you have autism, you'll have ADHD. That checks out. I'd say that checks out based on personal experience. But
Absolutely.
yeah, would you say your book is made for many families who have children on the autism spectrum or for educators?
Well, it's very useful for parents of children with autism. And again, I very much wanted to include autism in the title. The publisher at the time didn't want that. But yes, my book is going to be enormously helpful to the parent or an educator or clinician working with a child, teen, or young adult with autism. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha, gotcha. What do you think are the tools that most help a child with autism who has language-based learning disabilities?
Well, it's important to remember that the human brain is a social organ. What do I mean by that? I mean this, that the human brain is actually designed to work in relation to other brains. And if you think about all mammals are social creatures and they tend to work together. If you look at other types of animals, take lizards, for example, they actually distribute themselves and space themselves apart and don't work constructively, certainly not in the ways that we mammals do, especially we humans. And so when we're helping any child, teen, young adult navigate school or navigate life, we want to make the process personal, interpersonal, collaborative, and working together to really leverage the fact that the human brain is a social organ. It's designed to work in context of relationship. And so we want to understand the tasks that lay before us or lay before a student as something for us to do together as a team. And that's really the thrust of my book. How do we do this successfully? How do we help the student navigate school with the understanding that very often the demands of school exceed the capacities of the student, but if we are there to scaffold and support and facilitate, we can really make school a much more productive and enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I agree. And that should be the goal because right now, it does feel like for many parents, the relationship with the school that they're at, especially public school, is very antagonistic, unfortunately, where they're kind of fighting a tug of war to see what services get to be tried out. It's not a very fun process because at the end, the child loses during the tug of war fight. What would you say should be done at schools? Like, do you think like the tools that you talk about in your book should be integrated?
Well, one thing we have to keep in mind, we often focus really hard on trying to change the student, when in fact, we need to be trying to change elements of the environment because we can't force every child to be successful in every school, but we can change elements of the environment that we know are incompatible with how the child learns and also how the child can regulate and feel comfortable and safe in that environment. For example, many students, it's not just students with autism, but many students, when they're in an environment and they're unfamiliar with who the people are, what their names are, unfamiliar with aspects of the environment because the environment's changing frequently, that can be a nerve-wracking experience for anybody. But for individuals who really like a lot of the capacity to predict and have advanced knowledge, which is one of the amazing, wonderful qualities of individuals with autism. They really need things to be predictable. But you walk into a school and it's anything but predictable. In addition, we know that individuals with autism tend to have real sensitivity to sensory input. And this, again, is a remarkable capacity, perhaps why individuals with autism are frequently so gifted with music and the arts, because they're very sensitive to light and sound and color. But if we overwhelm the system with lots of noise and changing environment and lots of different changing visual dimensions, it can be a sensory overload. And this can be very disconcerting to a child, to a teen, to a young adult with autism, and then get overwhelmed. And then they have a very difficult time accessing what they're normally good at, which is, interacting with the individuals around them, trying to communicate. But when any of us get flustered by the complex, overwhelming environment, we can't access what we need to access to be successful. And this is why a lot of typical school settings are not optimal for individuals, a lot of individuals, including individuals with autism.
I agree. My sister, who's also autistic, she went to a public school for some time, and unfortunately, it wasn't very accessible because sensory. She often had to bring like headphones with her to block out noise. And one of the things I found very puzzling, and I brought this up with other guest speakers that we've had, is how she won't mind her own noise. I know this is kind of going on a tangent, but she won't mind her own noise. So she could raise her voice very loudly, and that's no problem for her. Music could be very loudly, but there's just certain sounds that really get to her. Uh, I've noticed that and that actually, that does lead me to an important point, which is like, we're not made with a cookie cutter tool. Like each person with autism, like it's interventions have to be curated for them, not like all curated for like the collective, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So your foundation, is it supposed to, I've only done admittedly I've only done brief research on it. What does your foundation provide?
So my organization is called Franklin Educational Services, and we provide a very broad range of education and education-related services to children, teens, and young adults. We see students with a broad range of unique learning and behavioral differences, and we work with students who are very high achieving academically. And as you are aware, many of our students with autism are achieving at very high academic levels. So our educational services are designed to provide educational support that is suitable to the student's unique learning needs and level of learning, whether it's at AP honors level chemistry and physics or foreign language, as is the case with a number of our students, or to a highly modified curriculum for a child with very slowly emerging reading and writing skills, or for some of our children with autism, where we really need to engage them more at a social level, because one of the key objectives is promoting social communication, engaging them in ways of speaking and listening and interacting, often through fun, playful activities, games, puzzles, creating artwork, and things that tap in to the natural sense of play that is in all children, all people, and using an approach to teaching critical skills through fun and engaging activities.
Yeah. Someone on our chat just mentioned that you have homeschooling on your site. Yeah, I noticed that as well. You had a homeschooling section. Can you tell us a little bit what that's about?
Sure. We offer fully accredited one-on-one schooling. It used to be called homeschooling when people learned at home. Nowadays, one-on-one schooling is growing rapidly. One of the fastest growing areas in education is one-on-one schooling. We know there's robust science on this. The work of Benjamin Bloom at the University of Chicago found that there is no substitute for one-on-one learning. It is hands down the best way to learn. You get the best learning outcomes learning one-on-one. And there are a lot of students, especially students with autism, who can be distracted by a large social group for different reasons. It could be a sensory level because of sounds. It could be a social level because there's a lot of awareness of different individuals around them. But when we can work with individuals one-on-one in a very calm, uh, soothing environment where we can focus on being calm and regulated, students are capable of incredible strides academically, and we get excellent results from our one-on-one schooling program.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you could absolutely say it's like evidence-based because it does seem to be providing results. Actually, that's a really good point that academic brings up, that one-on-one teaching. Because yeah, you don't have a group of peers being a distraction. You can change the environment the way that's most suitable for whoever is a student. Like if you don't want loud noises, there doesn't have to be loud noises. If you don't want certain sensitivity, there doesn't have to be that sensitivity there. That sounds really awesome. How long has that been around for your foundation?
Oh goodness, I've been doing one-on-one schooling for well over 20 years. Uh,
Wow.
there are a number of other advantages too. And that is in a classroom setting, when a teacher asks a question, generally it's 2 or 3 kids in the class who always answer the questions. And kids who process differently or communicate differently never have an opportunity to engage
Mhm.
in learning. We call it active learning. Active learning is asking questions, is answering questions, is contributing to the discussion. But for students with autism, they never have an opportunity to participate in active learning because so many other students around them are answering the questions, or the question is not phrased in a way that the student may understand. But when we're working one-on-one, we have an opportunity to ask the question, ask the student if they understand it, to state the question in a different way, to make the question not into a question, but more of a discussion so that the response is more organic and fluid. And then that becomes very motivating for a student to want to engage in this dialogue. You know, before the Industrial Revolution, there were no such things as big schools. You know, if you look at big schools where the student is a product of the process, and as much and in a similar way that factories produce products, and schools after the Industrial Revolution really became a means of processing lots of students efficiently. But that's not compatible with the human brain because no two humans are the same. Every student benefits from a different touch, a different approach, learning different things in different ways at different rates. And when we can individualize the learning environment, it's much more compatible with, frankly, how most students learn, but especially students with autism.
Gotcha, gotcha. Is this done over a period of years, like from kindergarten all the way to high school, 12th grade?
Oh, sure. We've had students kindergarten through 12th grade. We even provide college level courses, which you can now
Wow.
do. You can access terrific college level curriculum and teach college level courses for credit. And so, and many of our students have indeed been with us for multiple years and have gone on to graduate here and to go on to great jobs or great colleges. And so it's really a terrific, productive way to approach education.
Gotcha. That sounds really awesome. Is the academic who you had mentioned, did they say what they said for just, is that like regarding the effects with just students with autism or everyone? That's where there's the most change or most benefit?
Let me make sure I understand your question, David. When we're talking about one-on-one instruction,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, it applies to everybody,
Gotcha.
that it's not just individuals with dyslexia or autism. Benjamin Bloom's work, he was a very good scientist. When you do research the principle of randomization. That is, you randomly assign subjects to the study group or the control group. And he had many different students with many different learning and behavioral characteristics randomly assigned. The findings are very conclusive that one-on-one instruction is more effective. There's actually a term for it. It's called the 2 sigma problem. Students who learn one-on-one score 2 standard deviations better than students who are taught in group lessons. So it's called the 2 sigma 2 chi problem.
That's really profound. That's really awesome that you've incorporated that into your not nonprofit, sorry, your foundation.
Well, it's interesting. We are actually what's called a non-public agency. That means that we do receive funding for students from different funding resources from school districts. We receive funding for here in California. We have the regional centers, and other resources do support and underwrite and provide funding for students in our receiving our services.
Gotcha. So what came first, the foundation or your book?
Oh, my work, my practice as a educational consultant, my practice as a learning specialist. Of course, I was a classroom teacher and a school administrator for a number of years before doing either one of those things. I started my career in education well over 30 years ago as a special education teacher. I went on to get my master's degree at Harvard Graduate School of Education in reading, language, and learning disabilities. And then I went to UCLA, where I received my PhD in psychological studies and education. During that time, I developed a practice as an educational consultant, a learning specialist, and I began to provide very specialized academic support, which I call academic management, because it's not just tutoring. It combines tutoring with principles of educational therapy. I am a board certified educational therapist, and along with just good oversight, instructional and learning oversight. And in the course of developing my work and my practice, I began to build initially a very small team of just 2 or 3 people. And as time went on, a larger number of individuals. And I started off in a very rather small, humble facility that then I grew out of and moved to a larger one and eventually a larger one. And now we are in 2 locations here in West LA and Brentwood and in Newport Beach.
Gotcha. How would you define academic management?
Academic management is a very careful, systematic analysis of all of the school-related demands on a student, understanding what it is they need to be doing, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and then providing very careful scaffolded support such that the student learns the content they're expected to learn, learns skills that they need to be a good student, including strategies for active learning, note-taking, class participation, and finally, getting good grades, which are a really important measure of success at school. So those are the 3 principles of academic management. In fact, we call it the golden 3: learn content, learn skills, get good grades.
Gotcha. So you're planning on writing a second book. Forgive me, but what is it called again? Or do you have a name out?
Yeah, it'll be helping your child with autism.
Oh, so okay, I see. So this will be for parents, not so much parents and educators. I see. That's actually really good because I think there's a lot of parents out there, a lot of parents that I've met that when they discover their kids on the spectrum, they think, what do I do? And what often ends up happening is that they hear doom and gloom, that they'll be read all these statistics and then they start losing hope in their kid. Or the worst feeling is when you're being told it by a physician or a psychologist after you're born who says, hey, your kid's not going to be able to do so and so. So yeah, good that books like that are coming out. So parents actually have tools to help them, some guidance, because a lot of them, unfortunately, they don't know what to do.
Sure. And if you're a parent listening right now, or a clinician or an educator, and you want some help, my current book, and I'm hold up the cover for those of you who are, I guess it appears to be backwards to me, David. Is it mirrored to you, or is there?
No, it looks fine.
It looks fine. Okay.
Yeah.
At any rate, this book here, this is my book, Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities. And this is an excellent book for all parents of all children, including autism. And I really encourage parents to utilize this book, because the strategies I recommend in my book are enormously effective for students with autism.
Gotcha. What would you say is the most useful strategy, though?
Well, it's a great question, and there's a simple answer: compassion.
Mm-hmm.
We are the most helpful to anybody, whether it is another adult, whether it's a child, a teen, a young adult, a colleague, a family member, anybody. All of us in the world benefit from compassion. And when we allow our natural capacity for compassion, humans have a natural capacity for compassion. If you are just about anywhere and there's a car accident, what do people do? They don't run away, they run towards the accident to help. Anytime there's a car accident, people run towards the accident, even at their own peril of getting hit by cars. Humans are naturally compassionate. And as long as we allow our natural sense for compassion to guide all of our decision making, whether we're helping a little child manage tying their shoe, or completing a spelling book, or helping a colleague with an enormously complex challenge at work, we're being compassionate. And we really, you can, all of your decision making as an educator or a parent or a colleague, if it's driven by compassion, you will be successful.
Indeed, indeed. And yes, we do need more compassion towards our autistic family members and students, because a lot of them are not being helped out. And it's really sad. Many stories to share, although we're not here for doom and gloom. Yeah, what's another tool that you would
Another
say helps out a
tool,
lot?
yeah, another tool is remembering the human brain is a social organ. That when we're helping to help somebody, you want to work with them. The idea of working collaboratively, interactively, to be a collaborator and a partner. That it's not helpful to ask a child who's struggling with an assignment to say, oh, try harder, or I'm going to come back in 10 minutes to see how much you've completed. That's not being helpful. What is being helpful is talking through what's happening and discussing, providing prompts and suggestions, and offering support and help. Sometimes when I'm working with a child who has a whole bunch of math problems to do on a math sheet, the first thing I said, circle the math problem you want me to do. And then I'll do a math problem. I say, now show me one you want to do, and I will help you. And then we'll do one together. I say, now which one do you want me to do? And so, you want to work collaboratively, you want to work interactively. One of the things that gets overlooked all the time at school is this. While the child is learning to read, that is while the child is still unskilled at reading and they're learning to read, they cannot use reading to learn. So when we send reading home with a child so that they can learn something about history or science or whatever it is they happen to be studying, if they're not a skilled reader, they can't read that material and learn from it. While you're learning to read, you cannot read to learn. So we want to come up with meaningful bypass strategies. In other words, we want to read the material aloud to the child and check for understanding. Or sometimes I'll actually just read the material silently to myself and explain what it says, create pictographs and illustrations and diagrams, and come up with interesting stories to help convey the meaning of what it was they were required to read. Now, we want kids to become skilled readers too, but we want reading instruction to be done separately. And so, yes, there's a very important place. And believe me, I started my career as a reading specialist. There are few people in this world who care more about teaching reading and effective reading instruction and the beauty of becoming a skilled reader than me. It's really important. But we do not want to combine content learning with reading skill development until the student is a skilled reader. And then once they're a skilled reader, we can talk about some more advanced reading comprehension strategies. And there's this important analogy with writing. Now, all of us have had the experience of sitting down to dash off a very quick 30-second email, and 30 minutes later, we're still drafting a much longer email. What are we doing? We're using writing as a thinking tool. We're developing idea, refining an idea, reflecting on how we want to communicate our thoughts. And we're doing that because we're skilled writers, so we can. But if a child is learning to write, they can't use writing that way. And so much like reading support, writing support also needs to be very collaborative and interactive. And so when my students, especially if they're unskilled writers, have a writing assignment, I start with a conversation about the topic. I begin to write down things that they say. I ask them other questions so that they can elaborate. I begin to type so that they can dictate to me what they want to say. And you want to make writing a highly collaborative and interactive process. Not only does a writing assignment get done better and quicker, this is actually how individuals learn to write the best. And because this is what we do as skilled writers. Now, is there a place for asking kids to sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and to write independently? Sure, there is. But again, much like in reading instruction, we want to be careful about how and when and where we have a kid engage in that kind of structured writing.
Right. The goal should be to give them the skill so they can do it on their own.
The goal should be to provide as much support as necessary until the child has achieved increasing levels of independence. I always say this: if you want to make a person dependent on you for the rest of their lives, withhold the support they need when they need it. If you want to make someone independent, provide them with the help they need when they need it. And so, but provide the help in a way that's instructive, that is collaborative, and in a way that is modeled so that it is appropriate to the student's skill level.
Gotcha. Sorry, foundation. Can I call it a foundation?
If you like, we're not formally a foundation yet. I'm certainly in discussion with some individuals about expanding my company, Franklin Educational Services, into a foundation so that we can increase the number of homeschool or one-on-one schooling facilities we have, and increasing the amount of funding so that we can provide not only our instructional services to more students, but to provide parent coaching and provide parents with coaching and support and a community so that parenting a child with autism can be something we can celebrate as a community and not something that parents are left alone to do all by themselves, which is indeed a very lonely and difficult undertaking.
Oh yeah, it is a very difficult journey, but I'm glad there's people like you around, you and your organization. You said you're considering expanding, or you're in the process of that, expanding to other parts of California or to other states?
Yes, well, initially here in California, we have 2 locations, as I mentioned before, one here in West Los Angeles, one in Newport Beach. We are eager to open our 3rd and hopefully a 4th location. We are actively seeking groups and individuals to underwrite our services so that we can provide our services to a broader range of individuals. Although we do get some of our students are funded to some extent through school districts or through regional center. That funding is greatly needed and appreciated, but it's also rather modest. And for us to really achieve our goal of expanding the specialized learning environments that we have already for children, teens, and young adults with autism is going to take a bigger, broader community. And so if you're listening and you're eager to support me and my team, I'm very easy to reach. My email address is danielfranklinphd.com. That's actually my website, danielfranklinphd.com. I can be reached there. I reply to all emails. So whether you're listening to this presently, or a week or a month from now, or even 10 years from now, please reach out to me. I want to hear from you. I reply to all emails. Those of us who work in this field need all the help we can get. And so I am eager to hear from your listeners, and I welcome thoughts and ideas, and anyone who has an interest in helping children, teens, and young adults with autism thrive academically, thrive socially, thrive emotionally, achieve at high levels, and attend college and pursue their dreams and pursue careers and things that they're passionate about. All of these things are possible. It's just a level of commitment on our part to be present, to be compassionate, and to believe wholeheartedly in how amazing these young people are, and how much they can achieve.
Indeed, indeed. And I can attest here to Franklin's claim that he is very easy to communicate with. You responded pretty quickly. I appreciate that.
I do.
Yeah. Alrighty then. So I think we're going to end it here, and then we're going to switch over to Q&A. But thanks a bunch for coming on with us for this episode. You provided a lot of information to us, and I look forward to interviewing you again sometime in the future if you're interested on your second book. So thanks so much for being with us.
Don't wait for my second book. Have me come back sooner.
All right.
My second book it's a work in progress. If you want a book now that really has most of what you really need, it's right in this book here, Helping Your Child with Language-Based Learning Disabilities. It's available on Amazon. It's pretty inexpensive, around $17 or so, and it's very easy to read. It's designed for parents, but educators and clinicians will benefit from it as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.